Look who's with me. Amanda, your favorite. I know that's who you want to hear more from than me, but yes, she's on here tonight to make sure that I don't say anything stupid.
Yeah.
Right? Am I off to a good start?
Yeah,
Yes.
we'll see.
So we got a lot to cover tonight, and I thank you for being here and for taking the time. First things first, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and say something in the chat. I'm sure you want to. Go ahead and just tell us where you're from. You can even just type the number 1, whatever you want to do, just to communicate to YouTube, the algorithm, that you're watching and that this is something worth seeing. And we've had a lot of people who've come to the show because our live stream came across their feed and they were interested in it.
I'll just read a couple of these. Look, this one says, Dallas, seeing you respond to some of these people with such grace and patience is truly impressive. Everything you have said about the Chosen Inc. being a for-profit and all that, it makes total sense. I'm not sure why so many people in here are having such a hard time grasping it. I've only seen the first several episodes of The Chosen a while back. Look, if you're not a Christian, or maybe you like I used to be. I used to think I was a Christian because I went to church a few times. I used to think I was born in America. I guess I was born a Christian, wasn't I? No, nobody's born a Christian. God has no grandchildren. So, this is a normal response from someone who just doesn't know any better. Thank you for your careful and thoughtful words, Dallas, and thank you for not letting those who rush to judgment derail your wonderful work for the Lord. I'm just asking the questions. Is it for the Lord? Listen and decide for yourself.
And so, just make a comment and you can start sharing this with your friends, letting them know that you're watching. If you're on Facebook, do the same thing. If
We're going to skip ahead here.
Watching on the app, unfortunately, there's no algorithm there that's going to matter, but gifts.com is where you can get the new shirt and the new hat. All right. We're also going to cover some three pretty significant issues and questions that you've had. We're not going to talk about this much after tonight. I know even we've heard from occasionally a few people who've just said, can you not cover this in the live stream? I'm tired of it. I don't want to hear about it anymore. Here's the thing. Not everyone has experienced what you have. You might have already been on social media and heard all of this, but we've got some of our family members in the Chosen family who are just now coming to the party when it comes to these topics, who might not have heard about it or those who are hearing things and are hearing them inaccurately.
Yeah. Okay. So we were talking about this earlier, Summer and I feel bad for his wife because she is really on pins and needles. She's not enjoying this at all. This is excruciating for her for some reason. I don't know why, but her body language is just, this is not a comfortable moment. And I wonder why. You have to wonder why it is. Because as a Christian, when you receive a rebuke, while it might not be comfortable, rebukes are meant to grow you. Rebukes come in love. They might not always look like love.
And so we really do want to provide some final clarity on all that stuff. We've also got an amazing new video documentary for season 3 documentary. We'll say something really, we'll say something that we think is clear, and then
we're saying the thing, and then
someone will go, but what about that thing? And we'll go, I thought we said that, but let's
more things. Let's keep saying some things.
This is
right. Say some things. Just nervous chatter. All
family. This is a family chat. Even though you might be new, this might be your first live stream. This is a Chosen family. We've always been transparent and authentic, and or at least tried to be as much as possible. And we're happy to talk about these topics and consider them.
Let me just break in here on Dallas to remind you. You remember the topic I showed you right at the top of the show? This article here, Breaking California Bill would charge any parent who doesn't affirm transgenderism with child abuse. Like, what in the world? What's that got to do with anything? Well, it has to do with a lot, because that flag represents this. And if you're in Dallas Jenkins' position, once again, we've said it enough, you know what's at stake here. You don't get to sit on the fence. You have to choose. You have to make your election known. But he's not going to do that. He's going to choose the world.
that we would do the work to understand their position. Now, again, I haven't gotten to agreement. I'm talking about the work to understand it. That is the first kindness we give someone when in any kind of disagreement or potential dispute.
Probably being slow to speak, right?
Yeah.
Where that's coming from.
Well, and we're gonna, and if we do speak, it's to ask,
Right.
What exactly do you mean?
Yeah.
Number two, that we would work to understand their position so well that we can actually sympathize with it. Again, that doesn't mean agree with it. It just means I at least understand your position so well that if asked to share it or repeat it, I could do so, and so that I can actually sympathize.
How we give and receive a rebuke reveals more about us than you might realize. When was the last time someone rebuked you? How did you respond? When was the last time you needed to rebuke someone? When was the last time you really needed to be rebuked, right? It happens a lot. How did you respond? When somebody confronts us about a sin that they see in us, it's natural to get defensive. It's natural to fire back. Hard words are hard to hear, right? But there's, I'll talk about this a little more in just a minute about how to take these hard words and how we respond to these things.
Sympathize with where you are coming from, even if I don't share the position or agreement. Now, again, I'm not talking about any of the particular issues we're going to be discussing. I'm talking about in general, even the discussion itself. As you listen to us tonight, and as we in the chat, our team is in the chat, as we listen to you, our first two kindnesses are to understand first and then seek to actually be able to sympathize with it. Then the third kindness is to disagree with them in light of those things. Disagreement is not wrong, of course, obviously. In fact, it should be happening.
So what's missing? I'm not going to put you through this whole thing. We're not going to watch it all. We're not going to watch much more of it. You can watch this for yourself. It's on the Chosen's YouTube channel, right at the top. As I said at the top, we're going to assume that Mr. Jenkins is a Christian because that's how he presents himself. The whole group here, everyone here presents themselves. Everyone. Jenkins, and usually the people here with him on this set, let's just keep it to Jenkins. All right. Presents himself as a Christian. Talks about how important it is to get this right a lot. So we're going to assume that he is, and we're going to hold him to that standard. The problem here is there's no sense of, you don't get any sense here that there's a brokenness over one's own sin, right? In the spirit of King Lear, I am a man more sinned against than a sinner.
All the time, because we're around people all the time who hold positions that are different from us. So I want you to ask yourself as we go through this, do I do that in my life? Like, am I good at that? Am I good at making sure?
It's a huge challenge for me in marriage. That's where my first application came, is am I listening to you when I disagree with you? Am I processing what you're saying?
So this, honestly, this is just a lot of priming. It feels like a lot of priming. Before they get to the hard issue, they want to make sure that everyone understands just how Christian they really are, just how careful they are anytime they deal with a difficult issue. This is what we got here. This is what we're not getting any sense that there's any kind of sinner inside, that that we're not being careful. There's no apologies for any misunderstanding. Even if someone misunderstood, you would need to apologize for that too. We have to apologize for misunderstandings, when we're responsible for someone misunderstanding us. We need to own it, be responsible for that.
So when you're saying something about someone and you're asserting things about them and you're accusing them of things, or you're disagreeing with them on things, and if you're saying something inaccurate, certainly that would be a problem. No sense at all here that they've done anything wrong at all. So you know what their position is on this before they ever say a word. Care about disagreement. Amanda and I we knew going into this, we're going to make a Jesus show. We're going to try to get it out to the world. We're going to do it so that no one ever disagrees with anything that we say. Not something we decided. We welcome it. We have no problem with it in our life. We're surrounded by people who are unimpressed by the show, unimpressed by our ambitions.
This is not about the show. This is about your support and your position as clearly open and affirming, taking an antichrist position in your Christian ministry. This is what James calls double-minded. The Greek term under there is dipsukos. It means double-souled. To hold two positions. To hold one that is in harmony with Christ and hold another position that is counter to Christ. And to try to live them both out is double-minded. And what James says about being double-minded, it doesn't mean you're just wrong on that one thing. Being double-minded makes you unstable in all your ways. It makes you unreliable.
And are free and more than willing to tell us when they believe we're wrong. And we welcome that because it makes us better. That's the first thing. The second thing that I want you to keep in mind is a quote or a note that we actually got a couple.
Now, what you're going to hear here is a message from a viewer who was very touched by one of the episodes last season. Now, this is not good. This is not the way this should be handled, right? If I receive a rebuke from one of you folks for a pride flag that's back here, that ain't gonna happen. But if it did, I would be responsible to you to take your rebuke seriously and to receive it in love and then to return it. That's what maturity, that's what spiritual growth is about. We don't see that here. What they're going to do now, just watch.
A couple days ago. And this is the reason it's important for you to keep this in mind is because we always want to keep the main thing.
Remember, folks, the issue is the pride flag and the contradiction of it being on the set.
Go ahead and read this note that we got in our inbox a couple days ago.
It was in this episode where I broke down crying more than usual.
He's referring to the season finale of season 3. That's episode 8, the walking on water and feeding the 5,000.
It was in this episode where I broke down more than usual. Trapped in a pet sin, I saw myself drowning like Peter. That's when I saw Jesus' hand entering the sea. There I paused the series and cried. I sobbed, asking the Lord to save me like he saved Peter because I was drowning and couldn't swim. I quickly took my eyes off Jesus, and the sea took me to the bottom. But there, along with Peter, I also saw the hand of the Lord in the mess. The Lord calmed my sea and took me out of the midst of the waves. I feel that I am no longer in that danger. I feel free and saved, and now I'm going to run into Jesus' arms and beg, I'm sorry. Not like Peter, although I longed for it, but through confession. What a magnificent job you do, God bless. If there are wrong punctuations or words, I'm sorry. I speak Portuguese and I know very little English, so I translated the text through Google. LOL.
I wonder what LOL is in Portuguese. Here's why I want you to keep that in mind. Not because it changes anything about any disagreements we might have, but I want you to know what our heart is and why we do this.
Let's just stop right there. We want you to know what our heart is. We're going to, by what this nice lady, Portuguese lady, has sent into us, talking about how she was moved by our work. She was so moved by our work. Our work moves people so much, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we have an anti-Christian symbol on our set. It doesn't really matter if our entire cast comes out throwing out anti-Christian epithets all over the place. What matters is when people tell us we're good. That's what matters. It matters when people send us messages and tell us how important we are, what a good thing that we've done for them. You think I'm being too hard? Because if this was a real ministry and this person was having a real experience here, what would you hear from him? You would hear, praise God. Praise God. Thank you, Jesus, for this, for working in this woman for this month. That's not what you saw. You saw an intense moment of pride. So this is what I mean by just fully exposed. Anytime Dallas Jenkins is on here talking, it's just an exposed fest. He can't help himself.
We do this because of that. And the reason that you've donated.
How about that? You don't need to hear anything else, because all he's going to say from here is what you've heard already. He's going to belittle those who rebuked him. He's going to say, well, some of them were legitimate, but we're not, this is all out of hand. He's saying, look, you don't need to be worried about that pride flag. That's not important, because what's important are these messages that we get. In fact, here he says, this is why we do this for these. See, just bear with me, because I don't think people understand how significant this moment is right here. He's going to tell you why he does this TV show right here. Is it for the glory of God? Is it to exalt Christ? What's it really about?
To the show, if you have, or that you've paid forward, or that you've paid for tickets or whatever, is allowed us to get the show out to the world. It's allowed us to translate it into. You've donated to the show.
Oh no, did I lose it?
Cool. LOL.
Here you go.
I wonder what LOL is in Portuguese.
So the question here is, why does Dallas Jenkins do The Chosen?
Yeah.
Here's why I want you to keep that in mind. Not because it changes anything about any disagreements we might have, but I want you to know what our heart is and why we do this. We do this because of that.
We do this because of that. We do this for the letters we receive. We do this for the glory we get. We do this for the glory we get. What? Hundreds of thousands of people coming to the defense of this thing. It's just a great job you did there, Dallas, seeing you respond to some of these people with such grace and patience is truly impressive. I feel the love of Christ when I watch The Chosen. To keep that special feeling, I have found it helpful not to watch too many behind the scenes or whatever. Really impacted by the Portuguese lady's testimony. Where's Jesus in the Jesus show? Here's the problem. Here's why this is serious. Here's why this matters, right? Oh, it doesn't matter. It's the flag on the set. Little 3-inch flag, no big deal. No, here's why it matters. Now, this is not a brand new story. This is a few days old, but coming out of California, of course, a recently amended California bill would add affirming, the word, quote unquote, affirming, the sexual transition of a child to the state standard for parental responsibility and child welfare, making any parent who doesn't affirm transgenderism for their child guilty of child abuse under California state law. Should Dallas Jenkins take a position, or should he sit there and talk about, we do it for the letters, we do it for our glory? This is not Christian. I don't like to say that. I don't like to utter that. But it's not. And woe to those who call good evil and evil good. AB 957 passed California's State Assembly on May 3rd. But then a co-sponsor came in after hours. The bill was passed by Assemblymember Lori Wilson, who wrote the bill in February. Wilson has a child who identifies as transgender. Just stop right there. There's no such thing as transgender. Doesn't exist. That word is a terrible attempt at describing. It doesn't mean anything. Try to have someone, just ask someone to define it for you. They can't do it. If they do, you're going to hear a different definition. That is confusion. Satan is the author of confusion. So, the amendment came in after hours, after the bill was already passed. And what the bill does is this. It completely rewrites California's standard of child care. It would include the amendment that was added in after hours. Okay? Snuck in. Would include a parent's affirmation of the child's gender identity as part of the health, safety, and welfare of the child, altering the definition and application of the entire California Family Code. It would give California courts complete authority to remove a child from his or her parent's home if the parents disapprove of what Dallas Jenkins thinks is okay. LGBTQ plus ideology. If you're a parent in California and you just disagree with it, and your child goes and tells somebody that you do, they can come take your child away from you. Do you think it's important that Dallas Jenkins comes down on one side or the other of the pride flag? Come on. So, what it means is, by changing this definition, what constitutes the health, safety, and welfare of a child, it means that schools, churches, hospitals, and other organizations who interact with children would be required to affirm LGBTQ or transgender ideology. Let's just keep it there. Gender transitions, you would be required to affirm that, to say that is a real thing and it is a good thing and it should be protected and promoted by default, or risk charges of child abuse. California courts would now be able to accept reports of gender abuse from progressive activist organizations. What does this mean? This means that for simply being a Christian organization or a Christian parent who holds to a biblical worldview, they can take your kids away from you. It's not fake. It's not conspiracy theory. It's not tinfoil hat. It's in California. While the rest of the world, in Europe, people seem to be coming to their senses and backing off of the mutilation and all of the, California is going full steam ahead. For example, let's say a boy could report his parents to his local school's Gay Straight Alliance Club or other LGBTQ plus organization, who could then report the boy's parents for not some kind of, for child abuse. Can it get worse? You bet it can. They have provided no real definition whatsoever of what qualifies as non-affirming. Like there's no definition in what it means to not be affirming of your child's delusion about their gender, which means they can just do it. They can just choose to do it however and whenever they want. The bill makes no distinctions regarding the age of a child, how long a child has identified as transgender or affirmation of social transition versus medical sex change. So if the child just is mad at mom and decides they're transgender at 8 a.m. in the morning, by 9 a.m., he can have reported them, and he doesn't need to prove anything. The process starts in arresting parents for child abuse. Now, if you saw a few months ago, we did a story about what was going on in Washington. This was in context with the United Nations. Well, this was about the sanctuary states. This same guy who co-sponsored this bill authored Bill SB 107 that made California the first state to establish itself as a sanctuary state for minors. Remember what that was? That was the state where if a child shows up at the transgender clinic or at a shelter and says, my parents, they don't affirm whatever, that I want to be a girl, whatever. You just show up and say, my parents aren't being nice to me. They can take the child and hide the child from the parents. Remember, we covered this. That's literally what it means. They don't have to tell the parents that you're there. Now, it's true that some parental rights advocates, praise God, thank you, someone is doing something, they're responding. Somebody's doing something. The Heritage Foundation is responding. But I want to tell you this, Christless conservatism won't win. It won't stop this beast, because Christless conservatism is no better. Christless conservatism is no better than the transgender movement, because it stands on nothing. Right? You can't go into a debate with your counterpart, or you're in an adversarial position with someone you're debating against, especially if it's the World Health Organization or this movement, and you go in there and you're arguing for rights, and because the Constitution says, because it's right, because it's right, and it's freedom, and that's best for human beings, and you're wrong, you're not getting anywhere. That's just two tribes arguing back and forth about what ought to be. If you don't go in there with a foundation for a transcendent standard, that a standard that transcends all man-made laws, man-centered ideologies, you can't. You're not winning that argument. It's about the image of God. If you don't start from there, your argument has no purpose, has no legs. It's going nowhere. Before I finish this up, let me remind you one more time, please go to the App Store if you would and download the Armor of Truth mobile app. There's plenty of cool stuff there going on already and more yet to come. A Bible study in the book of James right now, a new Tracking Dystopia podcast series. These are audio. There's also some video content there that's exclusive for you. There's a Bible. You can go there and read some different translations of the Bible. And you can also support us there with the Give tab. So download that Armor of Truth app. It's the easiest thing you can do. It doesn't cost anything, and it won't cost anything.